Master Bruce, happy Halloween.
It's an absurd holiday.
Oh yes, putting on costumes and striking fear. Quite absurd.
All it takes is one bad day.
You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This is not my home. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network that has a whole list of other Bat-related shows that also like to dive into other nerdy subjects that all of us, including Peter Vera, love to frolic about in our free time. And if you want to support the show, just go to patreon.com/the Batman BC. Now, thank you for listening to episode 214, and you'll see the long Halloween in the title, and it probably doesn't sound like a surprise because that could be the title of every episode of the Batman Book Club. But I have a special guest, and I have a special angle that I'm talking about the long Halloween. It's coming hot off the heels of New York Comic Con is Mr. Writer Extraordinaire, Tim Sheridan, returning to this show. Tim, thanks for coming back on the Batman Book Club.
You and the Writer Extraordinaire thing.
It's catching on. You know,
Always, yeah, it is. I hear it now everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, Pete, this, you know, everybody that listens to this, their favorite Italian, Pete, he met you at New York Comic Con. He told me that the buzz was getting around. They might rename it next year to TimCon. So the Writer Extraordinaire is catching on.
They've approached me. I'm so glad to be here. It's so nice to be with you, my friend.
Always a pleasure. And I mean that. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And it isn't, every time isn't about the long Halloween, but this is the fifth time that you and I have podcasted together. And this will be the third time we talk about the long Halloween. So majority, yes, the majority
of fifth time,
twice on Batman on Film.
Okay.
Long Halloween parts 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Then you came on this show to talk Marv Wolfman's 8 issues on Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And then oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the title of it. John Paul Leon illustrated
Creature of the Night.
Creature of the Night. You were on last time talking about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're talking long Halloween this time though, because usually I like to, you know, Halloween and Christmas, I got to do something for the holidays. And I thought this would be a really fun one if you were available to come on here to talk to me about it, because little known fact for anybody listening, Tim Sheridan wrote the long Halloween parts 1 and 2, and I think he wrote the deluxe edition too.
Well,
right?
It's the same thing. Yeah. Well, and I always like to say, adapted, because
You adapted. Okay.
Yeah, because
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I wrote the screenplays, and that entails a lot of writing, but I would never want to take anything away from Mr. Jeff Loeb, who is ultimately the real genius behind the story.
He sure is. He was at New York Comic Con, and I meant to ask, and I was going to get into this discussion, and I mean, I've talked to you about it, but first off, Tim Sale, RIP, did you ever come across or ever get to meet him before he passed?
Never met him, and boy, I wish I could have.
Yeah, me too.
I saw in an interview somewhere he said some nice things about the movie.
Oh, good.
Kind of knocked my socks off, because
yeah,
like, first of all, you saw it, and and that's very kind and generous of him. And Jeff was the same way when I met him. He was so kind and generous about the thing, and because I feel like I don't know that I would be if I were in their shoes. I feel like, when you write what is, and I feel like, Ryan, you and I can preach to the choir here with each other and say, when you create the greatest Batman story of all time,
yes, preach. Preach.
I know opinions may vary, but not on this show.
Not that one. No.
You have every right to, and when some upstart crow comes along and meddles with it and adapts it for a different medium, to say, yeah, nah, not for me. It doesn't work. It's not the thing that I wanted,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I feel like they could have easily been that way, and I wouldn't have held it against them. I would have said,
Yeah.
"Yep, I
Sure.
totally get it." And yet, for those guys to be generous and kind and complimentary is, well, it's kind of the greatest
That's
thing
great.
that ever happened to me.
That's great. One day I will go to Jeff Loeb's booth and he'll say, "Hi, how are you?" And I'll be like, "What do you really think of Tim Sheridan's The Long Halloween?"
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny because, and I don't want to betray confidences here, but when I was working on a comic book called Flashpoint Beyond with Jeff Johns,
Yeah,
maybe I talked about
preach.
this before, but Jeff came in one day, we're in his office, and he goes, "Hey, Jeff Loeb and I are friends, right?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, he really loved your movie." And I laughed in Jeff Johns' face because
Yeah.
this is before I met Jeff Loeb. And I was like, "No, he
Yeah.
didn't." And the thing about Jeff Johns is that he is the most earnest and very honest person.
Mhm.
And when I just outright rejected what he said about Jeff Loeb's opinion of the movie, he was like, what do you,
I'm
no, I've
offended
talked to
right
him.
now.
He's my friend. He said he liked it a lot, and I just refused to believe him at the time.
Wow.
So yeah, so there was that. And then, I wish that I had been able to work with Jeff during the production of the movie, Jeff
Mhm.
Loeb during the production of the movie. There was some sensitivity about that because I guess he was still running Marvel Television at the time.
Gotcha.
And Warner Brothers, I had some sensitivity with the day that I asked them, "Hey, could somebody get Jeff Loeb on the horn for me?" Because I would
Yeah.
love to ask him some questions and make sure that I'm not going to totally distort some of the things that
Yeah.
he wanted to say.
Yeah. Well, maybe that would explain like when parts 1 and 2 came out, there wasn't much on the extras part at all. The deluxe actually had you showed up in it, but so did Jeff on like a 25, I think like a 25-minute documentary about
Yeah.
the story and stuff too. And so I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe it was all clear by then.
I
They
think
could
it was
ring him in
probably,
by then.
I think by then he might have left Marvel by that point
Okay.
because that was on the deluxe edition, right?
Yeah.
And that was a year later after
All
the
right.
movie first came out. So I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, the angle that to explain a little bit on here is I would really like so earlier this month actually I talked about Batman Year One, the artist edition. Biggest book I've ever seen in my life. It's
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah.
And I've talked about Year
Beautiful.
One on here before, but I just didn't want to do like a rehash because I've already let my opinions be known. But I wanted to ask an actual comic book artist to come on and kind of, go through like a different angle in covering it. So here I thought, okay, well, Tim obviously had to have read The Long Halloween more than 14 times to be able to adapt the book. So
Yep.
I would really like to pick your brain on like, more focus on the book, but how it related to your scripting and creating the scripts when it came to the movie overall.
You're going to
like,
be so disappointed, by the way.
am I? Okay.
I have a memory like a
Can't
sieve.
wait. Oh,
And
awesome.
so you're going to be doing a lot of prompting and maybe holding up pages and reminding me of things. Because
maybe
I'll be
we
like,
can
oh yeah.
maybe this is just all going to be like a big old improv game and we're just going to create our own legend. This is the real creation of The Long Halloween parts 1 and 2.
That's right. That's right.
As told on the Batman Book Club.
By the way,
But
why don't we have Jeff Loeb here? We need to get Jeff on the show.
listen, Tim, you're the one with all the connections. You know everybody. You've already met Jeff. You're basically best friends with Jeff Johns. I got nothing. So
when he's he should be doing some stuff for the last Halloween. Boy, I got to talk to people over at I got to
do
talk to
that.
some of my contacts and find out.
Yeah, I'll talk last Halloween on here with him. I'll talk about his Haunted Night 3 story. Whatever Jeff Loeb wants.
Me
Jeff
too.
Loeb gets.
I mean, we really
He's my favorite writer. My favorite Batman writer. Like,
I mean, and that was the thing. Remember, like I didn't just, you said I read Long Halloween 14 times to adapt it. Yeah, but I also read all the
yeah,
Legends of the Dark Knight, Haunted Night stuff, and When in Rome and Dark Victory, and like just everything that was there at the
yeah.
time. Because what I found when I had done the adaptation of Reign of the Superman, that was the first um DC animated movie I did. What I found was there was like a treasure trove of information that had come out in the comics after that story
Hmm.
had been published. For instance, the origins of Superboy were not clear during the Reign of the Superman arc in the comics, but then later on we found out that he was a clone of both Lex and Kal-El, and that was something that I thought was just too interesting to leave out of the
Sure.
story. So I put it into the movie, and I wanted to make sure that I
Yeah.
looked at all the totality of that of the Long Halloweeniverse
Hmm.
at the time, and if there was important information that we could use and that would help, tell the story,
Yeah.
we should do it. And we did a little bit of that. And then we took some cues from some stuff, especially I think from Haunted Night or the
Hmm.
the Legends of the Dark Knight stuff.
So to pre any rumblings of this adaptation and you getting involved, what was your history with the Long Halloween itself?
I had read it. I had read it
Hmm.
and I
Okay.
loved it.
Yeah. All right. There you
Um,
go.
but it's my history with comics is funny. Like when I was a kid, I got into Batman comics right when Dark Knight Returns happened and Death in the Family. And as you know, like, year three, A Lonely
Yeah.
Place of Dying.
Oh
It was
yeah.
all that late 80s era stuff. And so by the time Long Halloween came out, for me, it was like a it was very much, it felt like a continuation of the stuff that got me into Batman comics. The
Hmm.
same similar kind of tone.
Yeah.
Um, I took Batman seriously from a very young age. So anybody who was going to
Same.
take Batman seriously,
Hmm.
I was there for it. Um, but it was sort of, to me, I guess in my mind, it was this very standalone kind of thing. It just felt, even though it had been published in the pages, the monthly, pages of DC Comics, it felt to me like it was its own separate thing. I never really considered, back when I first read it, the idea that it was part of, like, that it was a real part of the lore, that it wasn't like an
Yeah.
Elseworlds angle on Batman, that it was really like a year two story for Batman, and that
Yeah.
how when I first read it, I didn't realize that it connected to year one. I didn't understand that because I was dumb, and um,
You were a child.
it's something. No, I wasn't.
You were
I
not a child.
wish.
Okay, never mind. Let's
I
fast forward
wish.
then. Okay, fast forward.
Mm, I wish I was a child, but no, I'm an old man now.
Oh
Um,
goodness.
so yeah, so my experience with it was, it's this great one-off cool thing. Meanwhile, Dark Victory happened, and I was like outside of the world of comics for a while, like really focused on like starting my life as an adult in the world, and I was, I focused more on my action figure collecting than my comic book reading at that time. And so I kind of missed all that.
Hmm.
And then so by the time the opportunity came around to do the movie, I realized that there was all this other material and these other things that I could read and research, and that it wasn't just that it wasn't just disconnected from as an Elseworld sort of thing, that it was really part
Hmm.
of Batman's canon and continuity. And that was so my relationship to it kind of changed in that way. Um,
Gotcha.
I guess. I mean, I guess I loved I loved both of those things. I loved the idea that it was its own angle, that it was like Dark Knight Returns, where it could be connected, but probably maybe isn't,
Yeah.
But I don't know why that mattered to me. It's still, there's something about comic book fans, isn't there? Like I got this when I first started writing like Titans for DC, where the editors were just like, yeah, but how does it impact everything else in the canon, all the other books in the line? How is what's going to happen here ripple through the rest of D? I was like, I don't know. I'm just telling my story. Like,
It is
but it's
Bill and
important.
I on Batman on Film. I mean, it's a tongue-in-cheek, a kind of smart-assy way, but we always go down the road of like, it's all connected. It's all connected because
Yeah.
somewhere it did, and I think it has bled into like live action now. And like any element when it comes to DC or Marvel is like, well, how is it connected? Like, how is
Yeah,
it connected to everything?
and
It's
that's the
like,
first question I was getting on
huh.
like Flashpoint Beyond when we were working
Yeah.
on that. People would say, okay, but is this going to actually affect the rest of the universe? Like people would get up in my face and like now be honest, is it going to affect the rest of the universe? And all I can think is like, why does that matter? If it's a great story, like who
Yeah.
cares? But that's me. I just read things differently.
That's
But I understand that it's important. And yet I say that, and then here I am finding that my opinion, or I don't know if my opinion changed, but my relationship to the Long Halloween changed when I
Mhm.
looked at it as being an essential piece of canon instead of, or continuity rather than just
Mhm.
an essential piece of canon.
Yeah.
Um, if that distinction makes sense. Uh, yeah, anyway, I don't know
No,
if any of that makes any sense, but that was that. I think I really liked the Long Halloween until I was adapting it, and that's when I fell in love with it. I
that was
also,
delivered perfectly. I really liked it until I adapted it. I was like, uh-oh, he's dropping a bomb here. And then I loved it. Ah, good one. I was like,
yeah,
wow,
no, I mean, but that,
twist. Didn't see that coming.
I like to really take you on a journey.
Yeah.
No, I mean that was. I think I really, and also when I was a little older when I was adapting it, and I never, I was never someone who appreciated or understood comic book art. I
Hmm.
never really did. I was always interested in the writing, in the words, in the
Hmm.
dialogue. The balloons were always where my eyes are focused. Even today, like I'm really focused on the balloons. But art that can shake that up for me, that can demand my attention
Yeah.
as a piece of as a huge integral part of the storytelling, that's always gonna, I mean, that happens all the time, and it gets when it gets my attention, it adds layers that a troglodyte like me wasn't ready to appreciate or might not appreciate otherwise. Tim Sale's work on The Long Halloween is a perfect example of how comic books are not just balloons, and they can't just be stories like on an outline. um
Hmm.
they live and die by the art that's on the page that's telling you the story. And um so I think Tim Sale and his work on Long Halloween probably woke me up and showed me that there was something I needed to be paying more attention to in comics, and that was good training for when I started writing comics.
Which is funny to me because he said, and for some reason, so it is insane. I think I've bought 6 different versions of the Long Halloween, and
Because
I
you're
think I'm
not well.
done
You're
because
not
I'm not
well.
well. No,
No,
no, it
there'll be
was,
another one and you'll get that one too.
well, the problem is DC, they're kind of backhanding the Long Halloween because they, in the Absolute Edition, which is by far the best edition,
Indeed.
um they printed it all on like a thick paper, and with all the blacks and shadows, it's like this is the best way to, like, it looks like the best visual representation. And post printings after that, it's been glossy, and it's just like this, once you had a taste of the good stuff, anything else is like this doesn't uh, um
It makes you wish you were reading the Absolute Edition. Yeah,
yeah, it is kind of like, why do I have these other versions? Because when I bust it out, I only read the Absolute Edition.
because they
But
include interesting other new things in the edition that,
exactly.
yeah, which is
The
what I wish they would do with the movie, by the way. We still have never done a commentary track for the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. Well, Chris Palmer, hey, shout out, right?
I
But like
know.
the first hardcover, there's an this was also reprinted in the trade paperback, which is the first version that I discovered and bought. There's a nice little, like, and I'm a sucker for like intros. I want to read the intros from, the Jeff Loeb, and they didn't reprint that in the Absolute Edition. In the Dark Victory hardcover first one, Tim Sale has an introduction that they did not reprint in the Absolute Edition, and I'm like, oh my, these are like lost little gems. And Sale, though, did in his intro, he'd said that like he thinks his work on Dark Victory is just flat out better across the board than the Long
Mhm.
Halloween. And it just
Mhm.
completely blows my mind because I would never say that Tim Sale's work is lesser than excellent. But I'm like, but your work on the Long Halloween is just like chef's kiss perfection for him to think like, it's not as good. This is like, what?
It's
What?
like when
I can't
people
believe
tell
that.
me, it's like when people tell me like, Two Towers Revenge or Return of the King. Revenge of the
Revenge of the King.
That sounds great.
The alternate
Or
cut.
or or Return of the King are the best of the Lord of the Rings movies, and I'm like, it's always still Fellowship for me, like because
Yeah.
I there's something about it. I don't know. To me, it's a complete package.
Yep.
There was the fact that it's the first in the line has a special kind of magic to it. Even though technically the Long Halloween is not the first sort of, if you could say
And
the
all
longest.
the characters are together. Like that's
Yeah.
what drives me nuts in stories is when it's like characters are finally all together. That's when it thrives, and they're like, let's split them up. It's like, no. And Fellowship has them actually all together. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
Anyways.
I just, it's the same thing with like Star Wars movies too. Like I'll often find that I like the first one more than
Mhm.
the other ones. People will say, oh, Revenge of the Sith, is of the prequels, and they all think Phantom Menace isn't very good. And I feel like, you know, as for all the problems that may exist, Phantom Menace still feels like the most complete thought to me. Like
Mm.
it's a complete thought and it's presented to you, and here you go. And so I still, if I had to weirdly pick one of the prequels, I'll pick that. So I think that Long Halloween is different, where the Long Halloween is so good that,
Yeah.
and his work is so Tim Sale's work is so good, and it's
Hmm.
so transformative in terms of the medium. I
Yeah.
think that I don't think anybody does what Tim Sale did. I don't think anybody can. It's
Mm-mm.
part of the reason why I think Butch Lukic decided to not even really attempt to replicate Tim Sale's
Yeah.
style in the movie in any way. I mean, I think Butch was the one who was just like, yeah, it's gonna be expensive. It's never gonna look as good as the book, and it's gonna make you wish you were reading the book instead of watching the movie.
Exactly.
I think he
And
said that. I might
you
have made
said
that up. I might have
you
dreamed
s-
it.
you said something similar to that when we talked about this before on for the Batman on Film podcast too, and how you'd said like you already have Tim Sale's version. Why would we try to mimic that? It's
Yeah,
just going to be
unless
lesser
Tim
than.
Sale did it. If Tim
Yeah.
Sale's like, hey, I want to do animation and let me see
Hmm.
if I can, but that wasn't how it happened. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
And it,
I would have loved to have seen his take on
sure.
that, but
Yeah.
if it's us doing it,
Yeah.
no, it could have never lived up as far as I'm concerned.
Just,
Um, so going in a completely different direction,
sure.
creating a new house style, which by the way was really also a product of the fact that while we'd already begun production on the Long Halloween when it was supposed to only be a standalone thing at Warner Animation. And we were already working on it when the decision came down that we would create an entire cycle of movies that would spin out from that, and that would ultimately end with Crisis on Infinite Earths. So once that made it easier to say, okay, we have to create a new house style for all of these movies. They're not all, even if we were going to do Tim Sale, then are all of these movies going to be in
Yeah.
a Tim Sale style? That would have been kind of strange and expensive. Um,
Kind of.
yeah. So we got that. And so what they did was they pulled from the things that they felt were the essential, themes and ideas from Tim's work on the
Hmm.
book. And I think most of that is seen in I think really clever and beautiful use of shadow in the movie that,
Yeah.
is not the way Tim does it, but at least paying attention to how you use shadow is
Yeah.
something that, to help tell the story is something that Tim did incredibly well.
While the exact look obviously is not duplicate, the mood and the atmosphere I think transferred from page to screen, and it's kind of like, well, then like that's all I would really ask for
Yeah.
when it like visually, and it totally transferred, and I was very happy because you were under the scope on this one, Tim. I was like, oh, don't ruin my childhood. with this, but
You've always been so kind. I can't imagine. I would love one day to like put some drinks in you and make you tell me what the things were that you really can't stand about the movie that drive you crazy. I don't know if you'll ever tell me. Will you?
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh
Now,
my.
we come from the Midwest, or I'm from the Midwest. The Midwest way, if you don't like something, you don't talk about it. So if I didn't like it, I wouldn't talk about it with
No,
you, because
I
then
know that
I don't have
in
to lie.
general.
And because then and then I don't want to also hurt feelings. But it's like
I
it
know
makes
that
it so
in
much
general.
easier.
Yeah, no, I know that in general you like it. You love it. But
Like it. Okay. I'll
I
say
you
correct
love it
yourself, sir.
in general. I'm just saying that even I like there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, I would do that differently now, or kind of things like, or I wish we had done this and not that. I mean, I made a conscious choice to not open with the wedding and not have, which is to me, it was, I love that stuff in the book, and I love the direct connections to Coppola's Godfather movie. And
Hmm.
like, I think that stuff is so effective and really, it's great in making a movie. It's doing like sort of adapting Coppola's Godfather wedding stuff into the book felt like a cool pull,
Yeah.
right? But to do it in the movie felt like, well, we're just kind of doing what Coppola did now with animation. It felt like there's an essential, like piece of that road that wouldn't be there because people would watch it who didn't read the book and just think we're just ripping off Coppola.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, I was like, well, we won't do, and I just only had so much real estate. So
Yeah.
it was like, let's not even include that, which is a huge, huge decision because that impacts, I think, so much of the story. Also, for a movie where I felt like I really wanted to focus on how the how Gotham City affected the families that run Gotham City. That was I wanted to really I thought that was the threads that were in the book that I really wanted to highlight on screen were about what this city does to families and the
Hmm.
families who run it. And which is also a very Godfather type of thing. And that's all in the book, but it's not as prominent, I think. It's a little bit more artfully done in the book than maybe the way I did it. I like, gave it, put big lights on it, flashed big bat signals on it so that you could see it, big Klieg lights. Um, and so it's a weird choice to then not start with the big wedding, which is kind of like
Yeah.
the ultimate family event and affair. But it did give us that we did get to have the scene. We did get to have the one scene, with Bruce and Carmine, which is
As I say, it's still opened up just like the book opens up of,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
believe in Gotham City in Falcone's office. And so
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
we're off and running. Okay.
Yes, I felt like we had to do that. Absolutely. I wanted you to know you were in good hands, that we love the book and
Yeah.
that, but then for me, that wedding is so important in the book. And it just, I mean, so much so that it's referenced quite a bit. But yeah.
The only bad thing, I guess, of skipping the wedding is that you did not get it's hot, but not as hot as the night Johnny Vitti got married.
I know.
It's
I
the only
never had
bummer.
a I thought about putting it in and I was like, because I don't know if you need to have the wedding. You can still
I've said
say
that
it.
before to people that don't have a freaking clue about the long Halloween, just for my own amusement. It was like,
I
it's not
know.
as hot as the night Johnny Vitti got married. Like, what? No, nothing.
You
You
could have
wouldn't get it.
said it. You could have said it. It might have been in a draft too at some point. I don't remember, but you start
Let me.
making tough decisions.
I've got a whole lineup of questions for you, but I guess um it wouldn't take you wouldn't have to get me hammered to speak honestly about the movie. One thing I could say that I was a little bummed that you didn't put in the movie was when Batman hits Grundy with this,
Yeah, yeah.
because I nobody knows what the hell that thing is. And I was like, man, I hope he puts it in the movie so that I can
Wait,
at least say what
what do you
that
mean?
is.
What do you
What is
mean?
it? What's he pull out of his utility belt and pop Grundy on the nose with? Nobody knows.
I
I'm
thought he was just
showing Tim.
punching him.
No, he's got something like if you see, he reaches in. Yeah, we're doing some real fun stuff here. He reaches in his utility belt grabs something,
Yeah.
and then he pops him, like it looks like it's on his knuckle or something, and he pops Grundy on the top of his nose,
Well, it's
and then
obviously
Grundy
a baby
starts
bottle.
bleeding.
It's a baby bottle nipple,
Oh,
obviously.
okay. All
No.
right. Well, there we go. Problem solved. But nobody knows. It has bugged me for. I found The Long Halloween in 2003, and that was the first time that I ever read it, and I have not known for 21 years
All
what
right.
that
So
is.
somebody please post a
Please answer
comment.
this. There,
Post a comment. Let us know.
that'll be my question to Jeff. Not what
Yeah.
do you really think about Tim Sheridan? If we have time, I'll get there. But the first one, be like,
The
what the
first one
hell
should be,
is
what the
this?
hell is
What
that?
is this?
And by the way, what if he says,
Okay,
God,
at
I'll
least
tell
I
you.
know. At least I know. Everybody make up your own answer on that.
No, because like Tim knew.
That's true. All right. Good for
Oh,
him.
somebody must know.
He laughs as he's like, none of you will ever know. It'll drive all of you crazy. But okay, so how I guess you semi explained it that when you got
Is that really the
involved.
thing that you were sad that's not there? Is that punch?
Oh no,
That,
I was really stretching for something,
yeah,
but
you
I was kind of hoping. I'm like,
totally
oh man,
are. Like,
if that's in
you're,
the
like you don't have,
can't
you don't have,
accept. You're
you're not feeling.
modest. We've talked many times. You're a modest guy, and you can't accept the fact that you actually like that you wrote something really good
No, I'm not.
nobody has complaints about.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we
Okay.
made some choices, and
Uh-huh.
for a long Halloween buff
Yeah.
like you, some of those choices might have, you might have had other thoughts about, had second thoughts about. I mean, you know, Alberto Falcone for one, like that's a we made some big decisions about that.
All right,
And
let's jump all over the place. Let's talk about now what you've done also that I love is I even in reading and hearing I'm watching The Penguin right now, hearing Alberto's name and then Sophia, I cannot help but think of how it is said, how the Roman says it in your movie of Alberto and then Sophia. That's just how I hear him now, etched in my brain, and I love it.
Titus
Alberto.
Welliver lives rent-free
Alberto. Yes.
in your brain.
I want to thank him
Good.
for that. I'll say,
Great.
I know people probably talk to you about Lost. I don't care. I want to talk to you about Alberto and Sophia.
Bosch. Nobody talks about Bosch.
Yeah. No, who cares? No, Alberto and Sophia. I love it. When Bill and I talked to you about part one, it ends at New Year's Eve, which is also pretty surprising to me of just on your end of part
Yeah.
one covered the first 4 chapters of the book, and then part 2 covered the next 9, but it ends at a good point. And I remember telling you this because I didn't know it was happening part 2 yet. And I said, Alberto, he's dead. It looks pretty freaking concrete that he is dead in the movie. And it's like, but it also looked concrete in the book. And so I was just like,
yes.
you could pull a fast one, but I don't know.
I'm sure we talked about this. I mean, in the script, it is my intention was, because when I'm writing the script, I'm writing down the movie in my brain
Mhm.
and then giving that to the story artists, and then they, will take that and maybe re-envision to do their own version of what they see the movie as. But
Yeah.
in my version, in the movie in my head, in the script, it's like in all caps. And it's like,
Dead.
whatever we can get away with to
Yeah.
make it very clear that he is not coming back. Then
What do you feel about Propeller?
well,
Yep, look, sounds good.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty definitive.
that was the stroke of, we were like, okay, let's do it. Let's like really do
Yeah.
it. And I feel like I don't think it ultimately really is as gross as it is in the script. The script made it gross. I think that
Awesome.
it's still a little bit tasteful in the movie,
Yeah,
where
it is.
you could think he might not have died, but
Yeah. Well,
so there's a lot of people who were waiting. They were waiting, and then he never showed up.
So I guess the big overall question, and then it's like we could go down these specific avenues, like your choice with Alberto, and then the identity of the holiday killer / killers is like, what was your approach when it was, Tim, do you like, do you have to pitch? Did they reach to you and be like, we're thinking of you, or is it like you're already in, like, you're already familiar because you did Man of Tomorrow, you did Reign of Superman.
Well, Man of
Will you
Tomorrow
just
came
do it?
after Long Halloween for me. That was the third movie I wrote.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah. You
Yeah.
told me Long Halloween was a long,
All I had done
process.
was
No pun intended.
all I had done. Well, it was they put us on hold because of
Yeah.
Matt Reeves' movie. Yeah, but so we moved up Man of Tomorrow in the production order. But Reign of the Superman was the only one that I had done. But
Okay.
in terms of those decisions, in terms of like the first meetings that Jim Krieg and Butch Lukic and I had about the story before I was scripting it, were really heavily about the solution to the mystery. And we felt that it's beautifully artfully done in the book, we felt. And I think I find myself kind of sometimes low-key arguing with people about this because it's so beautifully done that everybody thinks they know the solution from the book, but they all have different solutions. And I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's you guys, you all need to talk to each other because you all have different solutions and you all think you're right.
Mhm.
And so I had somebody just recently, it happens to me all the time. Somebody came up and said, why did you want to change the solution, change the ending? And I said, did I change it? Or did we focus on one possibility that you're presented with in the book?
Mhm.
Um, and we felt from the very beginning that we needed to be present a more definitive solution than the book presented. We felt that that would be the most satisfying thing in terms of a cinematic experience.
Yeah.
Um, and we all three of us very quickly said, and the one that to us makes the most sense, the thing that makes the most sense is not I did some of the murders, he did some of the murders, and maybe he did, which is also, a lot of people think that's the right solution. I think the book is full of unreliable narrators, by the way, I think. So I
Mhm.
just feel like, you can't, even if you're like, yeah, but he said it. And it's like, yeah, but they say a lot of things. These people, nobody is good in this story except,
Yeah.
Batman. And even he's not, he's a vigilante. Like he
Mhm.
works outside the law. Like technically he's a criminal. Um, try pitching that to DC. But so we all felt like we knew what we wanted to do, and we all agreed about Gilda, and that it made the most sense for us. And then it became a matter of how do we support that in
Yeah.
the story, and what what were the pieces that we would be able to thread that would lead us, to that as a very definitive solution. And even still, I feel like it's in the movie, it could easily be that you're getting unreliable narrators still. Like it could still be that that's not really the full solution in the end, but it feels more complete than I
Mhm.
think. Not complete's not the right word. It just feels more like we have our own definitive, point of view that we want to communicate
Yeah.
versus I feel like Jeff was, you know, wanted it to be a little bit more of a mosaic and a Rorschach test for people who read it. I don't know. I've never asked him about that, but I've always felt like it's a little bit of a Rorschach, mostly because of the way people respond to me and respond to what we did in the movie, where
Mhm.
I see everybody's different ideas of the solution, and I think, oh, this is even more genius than I thought it was at the time. It,
the
it
the
says more
book
about the people who are pitching the solution than it does about the book and the solution.
the book is it's fun for me if I go
By the way,
strictly on the
by the way,
go
then
ahead.
there's stuff in Dark Victory and everything in that, but we decided to completely ignore anything that came in Dark Victory. Like that was part of the decision process. We said we're not even going to talk about anything that points toward the solution of Long Halloween in Dark Victory. And that was just
Yeah.
we just said we're doing Long Halloween and we're not going to do that. Now, I
Yeah.
wanted to be influenced by that stuff, but not everybody on the production team wanted to be. So it
Gotcha.
was a decision we made.
The book's a fun read in playing the whole game of like which holiday killer is committing which one, even though Gilda does say at the end, because part of me wants to not believe that Harvey shot Alberto. But the line of when she returns to or when he returns to the house and Gilda says, Harvey, your hair, your hair is wet. And he's like, oh, it's been snowing. but he had a hat on, which I think I picked up on when I first read it. Um, and then she references it at the end of the book anyway. And so that adds like a whole like, oh wait, what? Sort of deal. And then
I mean, but
I don't
hats
know,
get wet
like,
in the snow, though,
oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Um, but I forget where I was going.
I mean, do you think he has a completely waterproof hat? Maybe that's if he said it's been snowing and I have a completely not waterproof hat. It's a water absorbent hat that I bought that I didn't tell you about, Gilda. Is that
Well,
a line we
by
should have had?
process of elimination, Gilda did not shoot Alberto. And if Harvey didn't, well, then though there's blood in the water, we see it like the full page is there's a blood in the water to where it's like, so does that mean Alberto just shot himself, jumped in the water, and then swam ashore? And that adds up a whole. Well, wait, if that happened, well then because apparently Valentine's Day on is picked up by Alberto. So I don't.
My
Now we're going down
my
so many
in
avenues.
terms of the movie,
Look what you did to me.
if I had a note about the movie, I really think it was not fair. It was not fair play in the mystery, the way that Holiday was depicted. And I think it's on the ship for on New Year's Eve, because I think it's too you see too much, and it's too obviously not Gilda, I
Mhm.
think. And in the way Holiday is drawn. And I don't, that's, if I had a note, that would be the note I would give, because I think that it needs to be fair play. You need to be able to look back at it and say, that could have been Gilda. And most
Yeah,
people look at that and say, that is clearly some dude. There's no way.
yeah.
Like,
I'm a sucker for the Scream movies. And when it's revealed that it's multiple killers and you see the physical size difference, especially in like one of them, it was a male and a female, and the size difference is just not even close. And
yeah.
then you rewatch the movie and you realize, oh, that's supposed to be her. And it's like, I can't believe that. I'm sorry. It's just that's not true. So the strength, I guess you could say, with the book is the heavily, you know, um, heavily in shadow. You see the
Mhm.
outline of the hat and then the gun to where, yeah, like physical appearance. You don't have that to be like, wait, no, that looks too small to be that's got to be Gilda. That's got to be it could just be whoever. That's a good point. There's my negative that you confessed. The one negative.
Yeah, but I feel bad because it's not like I didn't do any of the art. So for me, it's, I don't want to feel like I'm criticizing all the amazing people that worked on the movie. It's just,
So
if I had my if I had been able to give notes like that, that would have been a note I would have been very, very adamant about.
earliest on any memories of instant in your head, instant removals and instant additions.
Um, I mean, there editions. Yes, there was instant. Um, I don't think. I think the wedding to me was the one that I immediately knew I was going to remove that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I felt right away that our cast was going to be. I'm just going to say it. Like, I just felt like our cast was just going to be very white bread if for part one, if we did it completely as written. And I felt, in order to bring some more diversity into the cast, that we that was one piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece of it was that I felt like at the time when the book was released, people had a lot of opinions and fears and thoughts around the IRA. And I think the idea of the Irish mafia was something that was scarier and less, it was more mysterious. in a scary way to people when the book came out. So I felt like, let's kill those two birds. Let's get more diversity in our cast, and let's get a more mysterious mobster organization, mafia organization, and make it a Chinese triad. And so I pretty early on knew that I was going to want to make that change. Butch Lukic and I both felt like that was the right thing to do. And it meant that we were able to cast some actors of Asian descent. And I also felt, though, that even though there's, and there were some people who grumbled and said, well, you made the Asian characters villains. And I'm like, well, everybody's a villain in this movie. I'm sorry. But like there's really only one good guy, and even he's
Questionable.
But
In which that scene is
still,
awesome. Like that scene is freaking
yeah,
awesome.
it's pretty cool.
And
That
whatever,
was the other thing. It gave us an opportunity to do something really dynamic on screen for that fight, which we would not necessarily have been able to do as well. If we had done a straight lift, certainly we wouldn't have, because there's not even really that kind of fight.
it replaces a part in the story that is just, switching identities and, in the jail, which is still cool and everything.
Yeah.
But-
Although a little bit hard to do on screen. It would have been tough, because what people don't realize is that we would have had to have figured out how to do the voice. And so if you know that you've got Josh Duhamel doing the, Mickey Sullivan, is that his name? Mickey Sullivan? You know he's doing that voice. Or was he Mickey, or was he a different guy? I think it was Mickey.
I think it was Mickey.
If
only I had a book right here to double check.
Then I think that you would have known. I think you might have been tipped off that if it had been a completely different guy, then that's not really fair play, and I don't like that. So the voice would have been a problem, and also it's a little convenient. I don't know that we could have pulled off the shadowiness that Tim Sale does and obscure him enough that you would believe that it's him. It's very Mission Impossible, where they just swap out the actor with the other guy with the face. And so I don't know that we could have pulled it off. And so it replaced that, and it gave us some, and that's not very dynamic in terms of action in the book. Like, we needed to have periodic fights and action and things. I had to put a car chase in the movie, because you got to have some kind of something to change up that pace a little bit every now and then for a viewer,
the scene. Well, for maybe the biggest reason you couldn't do the identity switch is that Harvey Dent's in the hospital. So I'm, kind of hard for him to be in the jailhouse doing that.
But all that kind of came also out of the decisions I've made already. So it's kind of, it all sort of fed.
The Chinatown fight. This I can see it and I can hear it. I don't know whose decision. Maybe directors, Chris Palmer's, but of the reflection in the water puddle, and the soundtrack hits as it does like a full on spin or something too. It's just I can hear it, and I'm just like, man, that's really cool. And then it is like you said, it's just a great action piece. That I don't know, like that. I did not mind the switch. I was not there Tim, this is not how it was in the book. It totally works.
I also felt like, and I knew that we would probably there would be some people who would say, oh, well, you put these people in the movie, but you made them villains, and that's crappy. And so I wrote in the screenplay, there is a Chinese American police chief in Gotham City that is very much not corrupt. And he is, he doesn't have a huge role, but he pops up every now and then, and we ended up cutting him in one of the drafts, finally cutting him completely. I think part of it was because we felt like, well, do we really need that? Is it literally just to say, look, there's also this one, heroic Asian American guy, which felt kind of sleazy also in a way.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, there really shouldn't be anybody who is pure. And I think in this movie, in this story, I just don't think anybody should be so pure as this character was coming off. And so
Maybe
even Jim
Barbara
Gordon,
Gordon. I think maybe Barbara Gordon's the only one
Barbara,
that seems like
yeah.
she's just the wife that's just like you feel for her because Gordon's trying to do the right thing, but he's never home.
Well, but I
I guess
had
that's the
Barbara
only one.
in my version though. I had Barbara strangle a guy on the street just for a carton of cigarettes.
Why would they cut that?
I don't know.
Man,
I don't
obviously
know, but I
that's what was
really thought it was
missing. Okay.
important.
Yeah,
This is
now that you
gonna,
said that, this movie's not that good.
by
Doesn't
the
hold
way, this
together.
is going to show up in somebody's like,
Yeah.
post on Screen Rant someday where they're like, and Tim Sheridan also had cut a scene in which Barbara Gordon strangled a man for smokes.
And they were
Yeah,
going to do a sequel called Dark Victory, and she was the hangman.
that's
But,
right.
didn't work out that
Right.
way. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Wow.
So yeah,
What
so
twist.
that was so it was all right. I think it was right to cut that character. He was unnecessary. He wasn't from the book, and it was really a response to like a
Yeah.
pre-response to I thought where people would be upset that we had Asian characters who were all villains. But I was like, everybody's a freaking villain in this. Like what, sorry, but
Yeah.
everybody is. So it meant more to me that we were able to have a more diverse cast.
Mhm.
That's
It's
I work in Hollywood. I'm like, let's hire as many people as we can and people
how
from
many
all different walks of life.
how many pages was your script then?
Oh, I don't know.
Ballpark?
I
Well,
gotta-
I always hear like
I gotta-
1 page is 1
can't-
minute. So the deluxe
Well-
is like 2.5 hours. So it's like, okay, so like 150 pages. Does that seem right? Maybe a little less?
Oh, no. I
No,
think
no,
I
no.
probably turned in, I think my first draft of part one was 112 pages or something.
Excellent.
And they were like, Jim Butch was like, you better cut this down. Like, we're not going to do
Are you crazy?
112. I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna see if I can find I'm trying to open my
Have
folder.
you ever published
You would love,
your
by the
script
way.
and sold it? Because I will be the first one that will buy it. I want to I want that script. I want to see it. I want to read it.
I would love to show you this. I've always been weird about it, but I think it's been long enough now that I wonder if they would have an issue with that. I don't know. Mark Guggenheim, we do a lot of conventions together, and he prints and binds Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow scripts, and people really like those. Like to pick those up.
Please do that. I want to read this. It's another version of The Long Halloween to read.
I got all of these. I've got all of these synopses, but that's not what I want. Where is it? Anyway, I think it was. I don't remember what the final page count was, but I'll.
Gotcha.
How have I never shown you the screenplay?
I don't know. I'm not kidding.
But
I
there's
wanna
also
see
a
it.
thing where it's like you should see my original outline.
Yes,
And
I would love to.
The original outline was the thing that I was so terrified about, and I turned it in, and Mike Carlin, the great DC editor who oversaw, giving all the notes from DC for animation, he sent it back with no notes, which was the first time that ever happened to
Wow.
me in my life. And I was like, "Are you kidding? I'm adapting the biggest thing ever, and you don't have any notes on this outline." And he said, "Keep going." He just said, "Keep going. This is good.
Nice.
Keep going." So I was like,
okay. I'm a dweeb. I like making up stuff. In the Absolute Edition is Loeb's proposal, like his outline for it, and I love it. I love it. Sean Murphy was on this show earlier this year, and I asked him what would you want to talk about, and he picked an episode from Batman the Animated Series. Through total curveball, threw me up, and I'm like, how do I make that make sense? And I found online the original outline and then the original script of that episode. And I was like, okay, that's how we can make it make sense. So I read the actual outline and the actual script, and then we talked about like the episode that was produced, and it was a really fun journey to see what stuck, what got cut, what got altered. And it's like for stuff that I really, really like, The Long Halloween, that's really interesting to me, of like to just see that, not to criticize, not to be all like they should have done this. It's something to me that's just like interesting.
Why would you do that voice? That voice.
I don't know.
Who
I
are you
don't know.
impersonating?
I don't know.
Oh,
This person, I don't.
Here's Man of Tomorrow. How many pages was this? The final. Oh, you're going to be so sad.
Yeah.
I think it ended up being about minute for minute, because the final script for Man of Tomorrow is 82 pages long. That's it. And I think Long Halloween, I think I had to get it down like around 85 pages, 90 pages, something in there.
Interesting. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm
So
still
it probably
selling now.
is. It probably is
I'll buy
pretty
that.
close.
I'll
For
buy
a
that
minute.
script from you, Tim. Somebody omitted from the movie Vernon. Oh, Vernon. How far in the process did you think
89.
he can
Oh,
be?
88. 88 pages. That was part one, was 88
Part
pages.
1, 88?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Just found it.
I
But
think
now
it
I
was
don't know where the hell part two is.
Go look. But Vernon, like how far in the process did you realize Vernon's not like we need to cut Vernon?
How far in the process?
I know he's a
Uh,
minor character, but he is there because he's infiltrating to report to Maroney, ultimately gives the weapon, arms Maroney to create Two-Face.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's actually, I don't think he's in the outline at all. I think
Yeah,
there's some things that I felt like there's no real reason. We don't need to spend time on it, you know?
sure.
And also, it's expensive proposition. Every minute that you're spending,
Yeah,
a lot of people have to make that come to life. So
yeah.
if you can skip it, you skip it.
Mhm.
If it's something that, yeah, Sal Maroni, you know,
He's
um,
he's got the acid
he's
on
got
him.
it already. I mean, that's,
He's got
he
it.
had a plan, I mean, to me, it's, there were things that were so much more important in that scene to explain and
Yeah.
to put out there, that stuff like those little details get lost. But then you're right, like they get replaced because we
Mhm.
spend more time on adding things that weren't there, but you're kind of in some ways like Bondo would, to kind of make scenes connect together and make sense, or because we need to have somebody say the words because we don't have an omniscient voice in captions giving you like a play-by-play of what's happening
Yeah.
in the movie, which we felt that was one thing I decided very quickly early on. I mean, started writing it with Batman doing omniscient narration because I was like, well, it's film noir, and a detective film noir might have a narrator like that, the detective telling you his courageous story. But
Yeah.
and then I thought, well, we could change to other narrators throughout. But the more I was looking at it, the more I kept hearing it in my head, it just sounded a little cheesy. And then for this, but the biggest thing was I feel like it was Butch or somebody said, yeah. And then think about like when Batman's talking in narration and Batman's on screen, and his lips aren't moving, or his lips are moving in a different way because he's saying
Yeah.
something to somebody and we don't hear it. It's going to look like an animation mistake where you're going to look at it quickly and think, oh, they screwed up. You're hearing the voice, but it doesn't match. So I was like, yeah, you're right. So very early on, like right away, we cut the idea that we would have a narrator, or any narration, which makes it difficult because the comic
Sure.
books depend on that as a
Yeah.
storytelling device. It's how you can get through 22 pages of a comic book and have a lot of story in there.
Hmm.
And once that's not accessible to you as a writer, you've got to put essential pieces of information into people's mouths and in dialogue and in scenes. And now there's a scene where there wasn't a scene before because we've got to
Hmm.
communicate this important information that would have happened in a voiceover.
It
Um,
worked.
yeah,
Jury's out. It worked. So, phew. Thank goodness.
I was terrified, but yeah,
I I could tell. Something that
it's been
was
3 years. You'd think by now somebody would have said something.
thinking of where to jump. So two things that are done um really well, I think, is like I said, of part one
Oh,
is the first four chapters. Part two is, nine. Um, is the credits of setting the table to get us caught up to Halloween in those opening credits, getting Dent meeting with Johnny Vitti under the bridge that's labeled 1939. I noticed this time around. But it to where when we do get that title card of the Long Halloween, where Vitti's at the bathtub with the pumpkin and stuff, it's like we caught up in a way that wasn't just like, let's hurry up and throw out a bunch of information at you really quick so that we can get going. It felt natural and good. And then part two opens up in a good way of like taking us through
all right.
um taking us through like a couple of holiday killings in a way that also didn't feel like you're trying to hurry up and get through this so that we can just get
Um,
going. In
uh,
which the April Fool's Day is the Riddler doing this whole summary thing, and I think I know something you're gonna say because you said it on the BOF podcast, but I'd like you to repeat. And that's completely omitted from this, but not in a way that makes you really wish of like, where was that? We need that, because I think it does move in a good way, speeding through time. All right, what are you excited to tell me?
I'm so excited because I'm going to talk out of school here a little bit, and I'm
Great.
going to read to you
Yes.
from the script, from
Okay.
the screenplay, the final draft of Batman: The Long Halloween Part One, the
Gather around, kids.
the title sequence / montage,
Okay.
as I scripted it,
All right.
and it'll be fun for you because you will see what ended up in the movie and what
Mm-hmm.
maybe didn't end up in the movie or what have you. But
All
it's just
right.
it's a series of things. So first of all, we have the opening scene that ends with the son of Thomas Wayne narrows his eyes. Bruce, I believe in Gotham City. Cut to title sequence montage. Visuals establish that this is Batman Year 2. The Mafia, specifically the Romans, still runs Gotham, but there are 3 new sheriffs in town. Police Captain Jim Gordon, District Attorney Harvey Dent, and Vigilante the Batman. Gangsters with machine guns shoot out storefront windows. 2 mobsters flank a judge sitting behind his desk in his chambers. He opens an envelope full of cash and smiles. The mobsters smile too. Then one of them shoots the judge in the head. They take the money, fix their ties, and leave. Harvey Dent steps to the podium at his election headquarters as balloons and confetti stream down. The banner behind him reads, "Elect Harvey Dent for a new Gotham." A line of luxury sedans, one by one, explode. A crew of Chinese triad goons coolly leave the scene, all smiles. At Gotham PD HQ, Chief Robert Yang and a small group stand around a cake that reads, "Congrats, Captain Gordon." It's a promotion ceremony, but the honoree is missing. An officer whispers in Yang's ear as we cut to 2 mafia thugs rough up a laundromat owner until he gives up and fills a laundry bag with bills from his cash register. The satisfied guns walk outside where they're surrounded by GCPD cars and SWAT officers led by a stoic Jim Gordon. A van peels out in front of the Bank of Gotham as alarms ring. The mobsters inside laugh as they dump out bags of cash and make it rain. Then thump, something hits the van's roof, and a handful of tiny smoke bombs hit the street ahead. The van careens through the smoke, out of control, as the rear doors explode open and Batman leaps inside from the roof. Cut to back at the bank. The manager opens a door and finds the mobsters hogtied and the bags of money returned. Johnny Vitti, Falcone's nephew, takes a folder from a man in a dark alley. As Johnny leaves, we can make out that the other man is Harvey Dent, who narrows his eyes at Johnny. Vitti enters his apartment, puts the folder down, removes his jacket, and loosens his tie. Cut to moments later, Vitti walks into the bathroom in a robe, which he steps out of as he slips into the bathtub. He rests his head, closes his eyes, and takes a deep, relaxing breath as the bathroom door slowly opens. A gloved hand holding a .22 pistol with a rubber nipple on its tip snakes in and fires. Fade to bloody bathwater overflows onto the bathroom floor, approaching the .22, the blasted out nipple, and next to them, a small jack-o'-lantern. End of titles montage.
Goodness.
That's the way I scripted that opening sequence. A lot of that is in the movie.
Yeah.
I think.
I
recall.
could picture quite a bit of it.
Yeah. You'll go back now. You'll listen to what I'm saying. Watch it. So.
Yeah, it's going to be a little mini commentary just for the opening title sequence of
There's a little
of the Long
piece
Halloween.
Well, I wanted to read that because I feel like a lot of people wonder, like I could have just said in one line, I could have said opening, like this is only 89 pages or this script, right? And that's an entire page, little over a page that I lost to write all of that. And that's that's a lot of real estate.
Mm-hmm.
But and I could have just written one line that said, we do a montage in which we set up this, and this, and then we cut to titles or whatever. But to me, it was like, we're just getting the movie started. And I also, as the writer, needed to sort of create that world for myself and create it for the reader, who are the artists and the producers and everybody who's going to work on this movie. Mike Carlin's going to read this when we're going through the notes process. So it was important for me to put it in there. If at some point along the way they might have said, yeah, you can cut all that, we don't need it, I would have done that. But I think it's in there and most of it ended up, I think, in the movie, which is pretty much the way this movie went. I mean, we went through a robust notes process, me and the producers, over getting the screenplay right, because you want it to be as close to the movie as you can, so that everybody can get to work in all these different departments all over and know that they're all making the same thing. So that's an example of what the writer does, right?
Well, I think I'm always interested, and it's a case by case, deal of take comics even of like, does the artist want this very descriptive of what the writer is, or does the artist just tell me you want Batman to fight a gang, and then I'll take care of the rest? And it's like, well, I guess it just depends on.
Everybody's different in comics. In comics,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's different. Every artist has a different opinion about that. In animation, it tends to be that they want they want you to write like this. They want the movie in your head.
Gotcha.
But they'll
Okay.
also diverge. They'll change it. They'll diverge from it. They know they have license to do that. But regardless of what everybody else wants, I know what I want. And what I want is to, even when I'm writing a comic book or a movie, or an episode of television, it's to tell you, that I told you this earlier, to put as best I can on paper as a blueprint, the movie that's in my mind, the thing that's in my head. And I can give you as much detail as I can, that helps that helps the reader and ultimately the artists, reach their potential and be able to think about it the way they need to think about it to create what they're going to create. And I tell everybody I work with, here it is. This is the movie in my mind. So there's a lot of detail in some places. In some places you might find you wish there was more, and you can ask me for it. But you are free to throw it all away. If all it does is inspire you to come up with the better version of this for you, great, do that.
Yeah.
But I would never, I've never worked with, in animation, I've never worked with people who felt that there was too much here and that they didn't want to read it and it was getting in their way. Never had that happen. They might happen. They might think that. Some people might think that, but they've never said that to me.
It gives you the freedom
comics, though,
to just go, not hesitate, and just write what you want to write and how you visualize without thinking maybe they don't want to see this. You just do.
Yeah, I just think it's my job is to, like I say, give you the blueprint. These are the plans for the movie in my head. And but we're not just making the movie that's in my head. So here's mine. And now you guys do yours, is kind of how it works. And whatever of mine really influences them and inspires them, that's great. It may be that they read something I wrote and go, oh yeah, not that, but it makes them think of the better version of it. And that's what collaboration's all about, really. Comics, we can do that too. I do find, though, there are artists who will say, yeah, no, this is too much for me to deal with. They're on a much stricter time schedule too.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of time to read these things and spend a lot of time mulling over stuff sometimes. I mean, some of the artists I've worked with, they're very busy people. They've got a lot of work to do. And they're like, cut to the chase. And so I'll cut to the chase for those guys as best I can. So that's
two questions that I think are related to, like, scripting that we're on right now. I believe I'm going to lead you here. You had an idea for that April Fool's Riddler issue.
That's just an idea. I wrote it. If there's a screen,
you did write it. Okay. I didn't want to put total words in your mouth. So can you explain what that was?
It's called April's Fool, I think. And I delivered it, and they were going to make it. But
as a short or okay.
It's a short film, yeah. It might have ended up being incorporated in the deluxe edition. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Could have been.
It wasn't.
But no, it
should have been.
I mean, had they made it, they could have done that. But they
ran out of total.
I think they ran out of money.
Like a sell. Hey, we know you bought parts 1 and 2. This is why you should buy the deluxe edition, because we have a brand new short. Because DC used to do animated shorts all the time.
But here's the news flash for you. It wasn't April Fool's Day from the book. It was as much as you can. It was a different version of that holiday, a different take on it. Still featuring Riddler. still featuring Riddler, but it was a different take.
Ugh.
Um, I also pitched and I outlined, I don't think I wrote, I don't think I scripted it, but I also did one other short. I think I did two other shorts. At least I had outlines for two other shorts. I only scripted April's Fool, but there was an Easter one as well, because I always thought about how there's no Easter in Long
Yeah.
Halloween, and was wondered about that. And I felt that Solomon Grundy is he's so beautifully done in this story in the
Hmm.
book, but how in some ways you could consider him being a little underserved and that you'd like to know more. And Easter being a holiday of resurrection, I felt like there was no better take on that, angle on that
Oh
than to
yeah. Oh man.
tell the story of Solomon Grundy.
You haven't told me that
And
one before. That's awesome.
yeah, so I had that too. And, there was a moment when we were going to have some extra money and we were going to do some of these shorts that were going to have to be a part of the thing.
Oh, that
And
could have been so cool.
yeah,
Bummer. In
yeah,
another universe.
yeah.
Um, I'm really curious, how did you script the Scarecrow attack? And by that I mean when Batman's tripping out in the woods with Scarecrow, how do you get across this without just
What did
being
you
like
think about that sequence? Like, how did that?
loved it? I love
I
Scarecrow.
loved it
I
too.
like
I thought
horror. I like horror. Like
it
it,
came
it
out
works for me,
great.
and I'm like, it's oh my gosh, like and Scarecrow totally works in horror. Just the aesthetic of it, like somebody dressing up like a scarecrow is
Yeah.
perfect creepiness. And so then with what's happening in that moment and stuff, which fun little side note here on my iPad, I've been playing The Long Halloween, and look what part it just so
Oh,
happens to be at, like the scarecrow scene. Not
that's
planned,
weird.
not at all. Yeah. So I'm glad that it's at that part though, because I can, give out examples of what I see. But yeah, I was really curious with that and thinking about what to ask you about and what to talk about specifically, because we get
Well,
it's a cool moment in the book. There's no complaints about it in the book. It's cool. Um, but it's a dummy. But here it's really Scarecrow, and he unleashes his fear gas on Batman, and Batman he's not prepared to fight it, you could say.
I did it would appear that I did another title sequence montage in Long Halloween Part 2, and this one is 2 pages long.
Oh goodness.
Holy God.
All
Well,
right.
the reason for that is, you were saying how it covers 9 parts. It we we, we skipped over. We barely touched on some of the
Mhm.
holidays
Yeah.
because we knew that we weren't going to have, the real estate to do it. That's why it does seem surprising that we end on New Year's in the first movie, but I knew that we were going to cut through a lot of the holidays in part 2. Um, and yeah, this script was complex. I just arrived at Act 1A, which I've never written an
Perfect.
Act 1A and B before, but that's how I broke this up. Um, and all this stuff I haven't looked at these screenplays in a long time. I'm very proud of them though.
Good. You should be.
Uh, let's see. So this sequence in the forest, you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. What do you want to know?
Well, no, I mean, you don't have to like read it or anything. I just kind of think of like
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can
how
find
do
the answer.
you write um like because it's a trippy scene, obviously. It's like it's a hallucination. How do you write something like that where compare it to Batman fighting in Chinatown, it's like guy pulls out a weapon, Batman blocks it, Batman kicks the stuff. It's like here is Batman falls to his knees. He sees a forest burning. He sees a woman hanging and her head pops off and there's blood. Like,
Yeah.
perspective?
It's a good question. I'm looking at some of this stuff. I don't even think I did. I don't know. I'm looking at it now, and I have to read through it because I don't think I even said that we would show her.
Okay.
I think that was
Cool.
I think those were the story artists. I think that was the producer, I think. Let's see. Exterior Arkham Forest. Followed by the horse, the stallion rears up in the frame. The scarecrow. He leans in, and the horse lowers his head. Breakneck speed through the trees. The villain takes a moment to look behind. Batman leaps out and tackles him. He points his wrist at Batman's face. He stands now empty syringe stuck in his side. Rookie mistake. Scarecrow lets loose a creepy soft laugh. From Batman's perspective, the villain's face becomes distorted, more freakish and scary. Batman's eyes widen, he's sweating, he collapses to his knees. The trees around him come to monstrous life and advance on him as Scarecrow stands and remounts his stallion. And he tells him, "It was my mother. That's who helped me escape. I strangled the old witch years ago, but I think she still watches over her handsome little Johnny." Batman, heavy breathing. Scarecrow says, "Happy Mother's Day, prick," and then rides off toward the lights of Gotham as Batman whimpers, "Mother." Yeah, so I never indicated in that section visually that we would see the woman hanging from the. I mention he mentions that he strangled her, but also it's all very confusing, right? Like Batman's thinking about his mother. We're in Mother's Day, so yeah,
That's
the genius of the artists, you know.
Yeah.
That's them figuring out a visually dynamic way to tell that, where I've just got the two of them having a little, like a chase that ends quickly and a little altercation and a conversation and then one leaves. You know, that's not incredibly arresting visually, right?
Like that. I do. I like that sequence a lot. And that's really cool. They took your, like you'd said before, of like, that's the collaboration of your job. Okay.
That's where they make me look like I know what I'm, yeah. They make me look like I know what I'm doing. That's what happens in those sequences.
I wouldn't even say it's added for the movie. It's an expansion of something from the book, you know, and instead of it being a dummy, it really is Scarecrow. So we don't see Batman in Arkham talking to Calendar Man, and then officers, you know, are freaking out, and he's like, "Crane." No, it's instead we move to outside of Arkham. Cool. You hear the siren and he's on the horse. Just totally works. I think nothing's cut short, and I wouldn't say any version's better than the other. It's just like a really cool spot to expand that I actually like. I really liked.
I got to look at the first draft of the script again, though, because this is the final draft. The first draft, man, there was so much stuff. There are so many things that this part two went through a lot more revision than part one, I think, for production. There's lots of stuff that we decided to focus on and not focus on. And
take a gander, see if you can print it and sell it, and we'll line them up.
I don't know if I can show you the first draft. Maybe. I don't know. By then we were very much a well-oiled machine, though. So we had a real shorthand. You know, Butch Lukic and I already had a really good rapport from the start. We had worked on Justice League Action together, and that's why he hired me to do Long Halloween at Jim Krieg's prompting and suggestion. I think mostly because they didn't let me script Hush, by the way, because Jim knew that I really liked Hush, and my friend Arnie Altbacker got that gig. And I think when the Long Halloween came up as a possibility, they were like,
"We'll give you the other lobe.
Let's give it to the kid. Let's give it to the kid.
Give it to the kid." Another thing that you expanded upon from the book is, well, was it flat out everyone was on the same page if it was going to be Falcone instead of Falcone? Or is that a discussion?
I was a Falcone person. Did I tell you that?
Okay. No,
I was totally a Falcone person. Carmine Falcone. That was what it was in my head forever. And then when we started work on it, everybody else was saying Falcone. And I basically had to adjust myself to get on the same page.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think they're obviously right, and I was wrong, but you know.
No, I mean the current Batman universe now, it's Falcones. So
I don't have any comment to say about how they're doing it. In terms of the Long Halloween, I think
they're both correct.
Probably wrong, but you know,
yeah. Nah. But with that, the expansion of the scene of the flashback of Carmine being shot and brought to Wayne Manor.
Yeah.
Really cool scene. I can be a
Hated it?
sucker.
Hated it?
No,
Did you hate it?
absolutely not. I can be a sucker for like really cool, good moments instantly. Obviously, I think of The Dark Knight, but also in Christopher Nolan's inspired by Heat, when Pacino and De Niro meet in the diner and talk. But like when the good guy and the bad guy have a conversation, and there's almost like a mutual, like a weird like mutual respect, but like yeah, but we aren't, like, we're enemies, but right now we're being civil. And I really like that scene there where, kid Bruce just, wide-eyed and just cautious, but also the childlike quality of like no no barriers, just direct questioning, just completely being genuine. And I'd almost argue that Carmine's very likable
Yeah,
sitting on his
of course he
deathbed.
is.
But
But also he would not be who he was if he wasn't
yeah.
magnetic and
Mhm.
larger than life. I mean, he's the mayor of of the underworld. He's
Yeah.
a politician,
And
and
it
even when he's young, he's makes so magnetic.
indirectly arms Harvey Dent. I mean,
Yeah.
decades before, but indirectly arms him with that coin. But then
This
also,
is the kind of
the
stuff that I
line.
feel like Jeff Loeb would probably be mad at me about, by the way. This is the
Oh
kind
yeah.
of stuff that
Okay.
like I'm like, because there is look, I couldn't resist it, but there is the sort of like and that's the origin of the coin, like, ugh.
I
Like
I,
the
I
writer
understand.
trying
Okay.
to
Yeah.
make everything fit.
I understand. But I think we'd already seen via parts one, because I remember telling you that Gordon and Batman arm Harvey with the tools to become Two-Face by giving the gun and then
That's right.
giving the coin. Like
Yeah.
those are two things of Two-Face. Like those are his tools. So like,
But the fact that it comes from Falcone in a message basically to young
yeah,
Bruce, because he's teaching him a lesson that he's not going to learn from his father.
again, lined up with
Are
the
you kidding
scene
me?
on the iPad. What are we doing here? What are we doing?
That's so weird. That's so
But
weird. Yeah.
but I love and it's a callback by the end of the movie too. All we give, wait, all we have is what we take.
All we get is all we take.
All we get is what we take. Why did I write down the
All we
wrong
get
word?
is all we get is all we take.
All we get is all we take. I really like that line. I want to know what day, what time, where were you when you wrote that? Uh,
I think I was
I just think it's a strong line. I think it's
I
just a
was
really strong line.
thanks. I just felt like it was there is if you were gonna distill Falcone into one sort of motto,
Yeah.
like what would that be? What is
Yeah.
that driver? What does it all come down to for him? A simple thing that drives everything he does in his life and excuses it for him excuses the terrible things he does.
Yeah.
Because that's this is how to survive. It's also, he's teaching young Bruce Wayne that, about what it means to be a vigilante working outside the confines of the law. He's
Yeah.
putting a very important, ultimately life-changing idea into Bruce's head that nobody's going to let you be Batman. You have to take it.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to give you the night. You have to take it.
But speaking of Batman, I mean, at the end, Batman, as the Roman is dying in Batman's arms, and Batman repeats that line, and I forget what Roman responds to him, but it is an indicator of he knows that this is Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel like that's chancy as a writer,
Yeah,
to include that. Was there much convincing on your end to get that across? Because that's not implied at all in the book. I
no,
never got that at any point
it's
in the
not.
book whatsoever.
No, it's I don't think that's the one thing I would say is just really it doesn't quite have inspiration, like direct inspiration from the book. It
Sure.
was to me, it was that all is a product of I was trying to figure out if this is a story about family and Gotham City, and what Gotham City being a patriarch of Gotham City, being a family in this city, being sort of destroyed by it, being changed by the city itself and everybody in it. What does that mean for the Wayne family? And so it ended up, I started toying with the idea that Thomas and Martha were ultimately, lending legitimacy to the Roman Empire by involving him in the hospitals. They were using him basically to get the hospitals they wanted to get built, and how they didn't they weren't thinking two moves ahead, and they ultimately created a monster in a way, and that was response sort of like a little bit like Jack Nicholson, Joker creating, Batman it's a little bit
Yeah.
it's a lesser version of that. It's a kid cousin of that. It's not as direct. It's like,
Yeah.
they created Batman because they created the system in which Batman needs to exist. They were part of the creation of it. And so all of that and the relationship grew out of the idea that I needed to complicate Thomas and Martha's, specifically the Wayne family as a as
Mhm.
a as a as a one of the great families of Gotham City. They needed to also have some of that tarnish,
Yeah.
on them as well. So how does that work? And I started putting the pieces together, and it led to an interesting opportunity to
Mhm.
create a thread between Bruce and Carmine that ultimately I think has a nice sort of emotional payoff for those two characters at the end of that beat, at the end of Act 3 in the movie of part 2. Because what he says after that is when he realizes he's Bruce, he says, Falcone says, "Do you still believe?"
Yeah.
Which
There we go.
references the opening scene of part 1. I believe in Gotham City. And Batman says, "Yes, I do." And he says, "Good." And then he dies, you know?
Like,
Um, yeah. Yeah. And his tongue goes out and little X's appear on where his eyes are.
And they were like, let's do another take. Let's try it again. Maybe this one's not going to work.
Yeah. That stuff for me as a writer, that stuff's really satisfying. I like those.
Yeah.
I like I like that there's a little bit of emotional heft going on there and that it means something to Batman. Look, here's a criticism that it might sound like a criticism. It's just an observation, really, about the about a lot of Batman stories in general.
Mhm.
Batman in many of the great Batman stories is in many ways a bystander in his own story and is a tool or is a device, and even when he gets involved, it all kind of is because of the same. It's all for the same reason, which is it's his job to clean up the streets, and so if he's affected by what he's doing, it's because he's got a job to do, and this is the job he has to do. And for me, it was important to make it personal. It's not
Mhm.
just because he's got a job to do. It's because it's what he says to Alfred. He says, I was I thought I was doing this to honor my parents, but what if I'm really doing it to redeem them? And that to me opened up a whole new world of like thinking about why Batman's doing what he's doing, and that gave him an emotional connection to Carmine and to the city and to everything, where he feels like he's not just avenging their deaths, he's redeeming their ultimately what can be construed as misdeeds or incorrect actions that they took that created the situation that the city's in. Um, you know,
So why this movie I think is so good is because
Go
as you
on.
just like listening to that, it's like, hey everybody, was Tim talking about A, The Long Halloween, the movie, or B, The Long Halloween, the comic book, or C, both. Like it's interchangeable. It wasn't like you or your team, hijacked the name and then we're like, all right, let's just do our own little thing here. It was
No,
like,
yeah.
no,
I
it's
I
you
think
just
those
did a
things are
good
threads.
expansion of parts and stuff to where they just kind of go hand in hand. And it's like, do you want to read or do you want to watch? And I think you're gonna get like equal value out of whichever mood that you're in. And it's like, well, shit, that's the kind of adaptation that we want of material.
That's the thing. I mean, like Jim Krieg, when we were working on Reign of the Supermen, he said our job isn't to make a shot for panel remake. Our job is to make you, the audience, remember how you felt the first time you read the book, but now you're going to experience those feelings in the movie. That doesn't mean
Mhm.
that it's going to be word for word, shot for
Yeah.
panel, right? But so that's a very important lesson. But this had more than that. That to me, this was, for me, I don't think Reign of the Supermen, as great of a story as that is, has the kind of cachet that Long Halloween does and the kind of religious like following among people like,
What
oh,
are you
I don't know
talking about?
you. Yeah. And so for me, it was like, how can we do this in a way that we honor the book
Yeah.
and where we can, let's yes and and
Yeah. There we
this
go.
is this stuff that I'm talking about is a little bit of yes anding. And I think that those themes about family, because it's ultimately it's very much it has those connections to Godfather, it because of that all being there in the book. um how can we also bring that to Bruce's world and make it have a payoff? That's me. That to me, that feels like yes anding what's in the book and
Yeah.
giving it some stuff that's dramatically interesting. In a movie, ultimately we need to have scenes between people. So these are two scenes we just talked about between Carmine and Bruce. One when they're young, Bruce is a kid, and one
Yeah.
when on Carmine's deathbed. And those two scenes have this, connection of,
Mhm.
with Thomas and Martha, and and ultimately connect to Batman's whole reason for doing what he's doing, and his new understanding of his reason for doing what he's doing. That is a little bit of extra, I think. It's a
Mhm.
little bit of extra, little fairy dust we've sprinkled on to the movie that is in some ways in between panels and in between pages of the book. And sometimes in between lines, and it's there. That's
Yeah.
what great literature has, you filling in these bits and pieces. And yeah, a lot of the stuff I think is in these movies is stuff that I just think of as part of the book because it's stuff that it was generating in my brain when I read it, every time I've ever read it. And
Mhm.
it's not explicitly sometimes written by Jeff Loeb or created or visualized by Tim Sale, but it's almost like it may as well be. It's almost
Yeah.
like it's still in there somewhere. And it's, for a movie, sometimes you just gotta put it all out there, put it on the page and put it in the scenes because it's harder to, you're not sitting there thinking, you don't put it down for a minute and think a little bit about what that line means. And oh, he might mean this. No, the movie's going to keep going if you stop. And now
Yeah.
you're lost, you know? So we have to put it into dialogue and put it into scenes. So basically what I'm saying is my version is the really cheap, slutty version
Oh,
of
okay.
the Long Halloween.
Well, I like 80s slasher movies, and they are the cheap, slutty market of horror movies. So, this is it all makes sense to me why I like it so
I
much.
I
I
really hope that quote haunts me for the rest of my life.
oh, there's gonna be a
I
lot of quotes pulled from here, so
the
I hope you're
cheap
prepared.
slutty version of Long Halloween.
Uh, I've kept you a long time. I have one more thing, and then we can wrap up. But I gotta ask you with Selena with Catwoman. So the book dances around, and then we buy Dark Victory when in Rome. We get to the connection, her connection
Mhm,
with the Roman and the Falcone family. Yeah,
mhm.
Falcone. And
Falcone.
here it's oh, okay, my bad. Um Here you guys went more direct by movie's end of just getting there. What was the conversation of, because like you said
Yeah.
earlier, of this is the Long Halloween, not Dark Victory or the other elements. It's gonna make it Long Halloween, but what was the reasoning
So
behind that?
so there's a couple of reasons. First of all, I think it was early on, one of the producers or both the producers, sort of helped sort of set my mind straight in terms of all that other material.
Yeah,
And where I started thinking about, oh, maybe we should not do this because we might do it in a sequel, or might do it if we did Dark Victory, we'll do this. And they said, you really can't know if you're ever going to get to do any of that. So if it's stuff that you need and should have here now in this story, then we should pull it in because we may never get to
yeah,
do that other one. And they were right in the end.
yeah,
It was the same thing that happened with Superboy on Reign of the Superman. I mean, the stuff about his parentage was stuff that was really useful for the movie. But in the comics, it wouldn't have come out until much later. But it just was like, okay, no, we can use that here. And the reason why we needed it, I think, in this movie is because, there's not Catwoman is an integral character, but we don't get there's not a lot of opportunity for development of the character. In some ways, she could end up, if it's done ham-fistedly, she could end up being sort of just a device. And and I think that would have been unfortunate. I mean, Catwoman, we need to see at least the promise of the relationship that
yeah,
Catwoman can have with Batman. And so it gave her more to do. It gave her a reason to be here in the story that wasn't about Batman, which to me doesn't pass the Bechdel test, which is, an important thing we talk about in Hollywood, about depiction of female characters and whether they are fully well-rounded characters that are their own entities doing their own thing with their own wants and desires and needs, or whether they are just reactive and reacting and everything they do is connected to a man who's a bigger star of the scene or the movie,
yeah,
right? So there are ways in which it might be. I mean, she literally saves Batman's life a few times, and that could
yeah,
have easily just come off as she's just, here to serve him. And that to me isn't enough. I mean, this movie should be for everybody. And I think young women should be able to watch this movie and see a cool character that isn't just reactive to, the male protagonist in the story. And so ultimately I made her reactive to the antagonist. No, I mean, but she's got a mission. She's got a
yeah,
journey of her own that she's on, and it's a mission of discovery about who she is and who she's going to be, where she comes from and where she's going. And it's sort of like this movie within a movie that's going on with her chasing her destiny by learning about her sort of, ancestry, essentially, right? Her
hmm,
her family. It's all about family in the end.
yeah,
Um so I just thought it would give her character, we would be giving her a little bit more to do. It gave Naya Rivera a little bit more to do, which I was happy about because I wish I could have given her even more to do. She's so good. She was so good.
hmm,
Rest in peace.
yeah,
But it's to me those were the decisions early on. It was sort of being untethered by the idea of having to hold off to put stuff in a sequel. And just deciding, nope, this is the movie we're making. Let's look at it as this is the only one we're going to do. This is the only bite at the apple we're going to get. We just approached it that way. And once we did that, I felt like it was better for the Catwoman character and better for the story and a slightly better version of passing the Bechdel test if we gave her her own mission and her own journey that she was on, um, that
I
ultimately
I
connected to the Falcones.
I mean, I love Catwoman in the book, but yeah, this was up there with the animated series Catwoman, which I really like. Oh, I really really adore. Just by performance, aesthetic, the story, the moments she has in the throughout the movie and stuff. I just thought this Catwoman was fantastic. Also,
There's a thing that you get from, and I'm sure Jeff Loeb worked with this. I'm sure. I mean, I'd love to talk to him about it, but there's a thing you get from comic book readers that you don't necessarily, in fact, most often don't get from the people who watch the movies. This is what I've learned doing these Warner animated movies for DC. Um, and there's a legacy of information, a canon that exists in fans' heads, so that when Catwoman pops up in a book, even if she's only there for a scene or a little bit here and there and says a snarky line or an esoteric or mysterious line or something, and then leaves again, in your mind as a comic book reader, you're thinking about all those other great Catwoman stories and where, and how cool she is, and you're filling in all those gaps. She is alive when she's even not on the page for you as a comic book reader. And in a movie, we're dealing with an audience that hasn't necessarily read these things. I can't tell you. I just at New York Comic Con had several people come up and say, I really liked the Batman, the Long Halloween movie. I should really read the book. And every time I hear it, I'm like, oh my God, yes, please read the book.
Oh my God.
Like it's interesting to me, but we have a lot of people who only have seen the movies. And so, yeah, they know who Catwoman is. Most people, they've seen Batman movies, they've seen Batman Returns and the Batman, but you can't count on them knowing that much about her and having that level of like, that thing where when she's not on screen, she's still on screen for you, that you get from comics and comic book fans. Literally, comic book fans have that muscle, that I don't think all viewers have. So that's why it was important, I think, to flesh out the character and give her a little bit more to do. Well, one of the big reasons it was important. I think Jeff he could just have her show up, and he could have just had her show up one time and never see her again, and it still would have felt like she was in that book through the whole thing. And I think that's the way with a lot of the villains who pop up in that story.
I have two questions that I have to ask every guest, and maybe you forgot that I asked these questions.
Boxers. The answer is boxers.
Okay. All right. That applies for both questions. All right, good.
It's actually not true. When people ask me
No.
boxers or briefs, the honest answer is boxer briefs.
Boxer briefs. Absolutely.
I'm not just trying to be a politician. It's literally the answer.
And I'm not agreeing just to yes and like no, that is the answer. It's something totally just popped into my head.
Yeah.
Before these two questions, because you said this when I talked to you on Batman on Film, because I think you'd heard / seen, I don't even know if you'd call it criticisms, but Batman let Gilda get away with it.
Right.
And I really liked your answer. And how do you not know?
Really? What was it?
How do you not know that she went up those steps after talking to Batman and GCPD wasn't right there and arrested her?
I mean,
and I just think like that's a great answer, because we don't know. Just because we didn't see it doesn't mean that's not what happened.
And also, I would think that if you really believe that Batman would do that, it's surprising to me that your first thought wouldn't be, oh yeah, he's getting her to think she got away with it so that she will flush herself out and get, nabbed. We don't have to show it for it to be a very distinct possibility, It feels a little crappy on Batman's part though. Like, and I think sometimes you want to see the cuffs go on and you want to feel like, that's the ultimate most satisfying, end to the thing.
Yeah.
The villain gets nabbed.
People need
did I say this too?
definitive answers.
Did I say this too? Like, I also feel like, are you completely sure that it's her?
You didn't say
even
that.
now. Are you completely sure that this is still correct, or is she?
It was Alberto.
Maybe it was.
He was not hacked into pieces.
Maybe he wasn't.
I don't know.
Maybe it was Harvey. I don't know. Maybe it was. I don't know. Maybe she thinks it was Harvey, and so she's maybe like. And I feel like in the book this is possible, that she thinks it's Harvey, so she covers for him, even though because she loves him, even though She doesn't know, but she thinks it's him, so she does that. I don't know. I don't
What
know.
if you just
I
wrote the script? You wrote the script and you were like, I just blacked out. I don't even know what I wrote. So I don't even know what's what. And they're like, that's okay. We got to make the movie. Let's go.
I just think that if you really have a problem with it, there's a lot of ways out of that. Like you can
Yeah.
really, if you think about it, there's a lot of ways out of it. Me, you know what I wrote. I think that's how it goes. And I personally, I think Batman, leaves her today because
Mhm.
because the holiday killer is dead, that it's over. The long Halloween is over. I think he leaves her until next time. However,
Mhm.
that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're the writer, so it's a lot of people say that is the opinion.
No, honestly, the writer is just one guy. There's the I worked for the people that made the movie.
Oh,
Like
okay. All right.
you'd have to ask Butch Lukic what he
There's
thinks.
a political response right there. No, it was, hey, I worked for others. Two
In all
questions.
seriousness, though, in all
Sure.
seriousness, like that is true. Like I am a
Yeah.
hired gun. I come in and I give you the best thing I can, and they could easily throw it all out and start
Sure.
over or do it completely different than the way I say it. I mean, I'm just a guy that works for those guys. And if when they had opinions that affected the script, I had to make it work. I had to
Yeah.
rewrite it and make it so that it fit what they want them, so that in the end we're all making the same movie. Because otherwise it's a mess.
The two questions I always ask everyone, from your memory, and it's just first thing that pops into your head from The Long Halloween, the book, what is a favorite part?
Favorite part from the book
Yeah, the
is
book. I wouldn't ask you to choose from your movie because that's
no.
not fair.
I mean, I do have favorite parts of the movie. Um, my favorite part of the book is, I mean, it's so boring. That's the thing. I don't have a really good, I don't have a really good answer.
All
My
answers are
favorite,
good.
my favorite part is two parts. It's and
Ah, but up cha.
well, I mean that they're connected. That
Okay.
it's the trio on the rooftop.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning of the story and at the end of the story. And to me, that's there's it's beautifully it's clean and I don't want to say simple. It's not simple, but it's such a perfect distillation
Yeah.
of what
The
who the
story.
main characters are, what the story is going to be.
Yeah.
It's a bookend, and it's so well done to me that I wanted as much as I could to get those things in the movie as close as I could to, the book.
And you did. And you did.
I love those guys. I love those characters. I love the way they interact with each other. I don't know, there's something about that scene that's really cool. That opening scene that's really cool. I don't know. I like the idea that Harvey and Batman already have a relationship that Gordon doesn't know about, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I do too. Now this one's maybe is unfair, but what is your favorite? I usually say panel, but I'll just say like your image that like can pop into your head from the Long Halloween that you're like, oh, this, and maybe that's one of them that you just said.
No, if you
Okay.
say the long Halloween, the image that pops into my head first is the spread with the villains,
Oh,
with all the
the money
villains,
shots. Oh my gosh.
which I also wrote into the screenplay, and I'm like, yeah, just do it like this, and
Don't F this up.
and then what I ended up doing was creating a scene out of that, and like even a different scene, and kind of giving it more action, and you know
Yeah.
turning it into a thing. We had stuff happening down in the street. I also had all the stuff with. I'm sure I'm talking about the movie again. Talking about the them getting busted out of Arkham and all that stuff. So I kind of I had a lot of fun with that whole segment. But if you say the Long Halloween, probably that's the
Yeah.
first image that pops into my head. Also the action figures, which you can see a few of them are behind me here.
Now,
With
and those are the
Joker,
ones
Two-Face,
from
and
the
Batman.
90s.
Yeah, those are
I
the Long Halloween.
I want those.
And I've got some Dark
I have
Victory
Batman.
figures up here, which
I
you
got Dark
can't see.
Victory. My
I've got
gosh.
Scarecrow, Robin, and
Fantastic.
Gordon are up here. Yeah.
It's funny because your two answers, they are ones that I think of with the Long Halloween, is the three of them on the rooftop and then in the Roman's office at the end with all the villains spread out and
Yeah.
trick or treat. Like those are the two images that instant in my head.
I mean, would it be the same if it wasn't Trick or Treat? Like, would it be
No,
as iconic? I don't think so.
no.
I think that's what
Happy
landed.
Thanksgiving. Nah, that doesn't work. Maybe Merry Christmas, maybe, but no, because there's a pumpkin in there. So it's like, and I love Halloween, so yeah, all of it works. Um, I think I could probably talk another 7 hours about the Long Halloween with you, but we have things that we have to do, Tim. So I do thank you for. I knew this was going to be a long one. I knew it. But I
Yeah,
appreciate you coming back
because
on
of
and
me, because
talking.
I don't shut up. I just keep going and going. I even read to you an entire page of the
You
screenplay.
did. We had story time. But
We did.
this was the first Batman Book Club story time, and I appreciated it. No, I would totally blame you, except that it was about the Long Halloween. So this is on me. So
We talked
I
all
do
about the
I
movie, and
appreciate
I
it.
feel bad. We didn't really talk about the book.
Oh,
We
we
did,
brought it.
not like
We did a bit about the book, but I mean,
we didn't do a
yeah.
read through page by page
Well, that's why you
analysis
got to
of the book.
come back next year. Obviously, come back next year. But no,
I
thanks for coming. Thanks for coming back, Tim.
No,
Joy
you know
talking to
me.
you.
I'll come back anytime. I love talking about this stuff, but I like more than anything,
Mhm.
I like talking to you. Um, but I have bad news for everybody, and I'm
Uh-oh.
constantly breaking this news to people at conventions when I'm making appearances. I'm just like, they're like, oh yeah, I'll have like the Blu-rays will be out so that people can see the posters and stuff, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I gotta watch that. I'll have to put it on in my Max queue, and I'm like. I'm so sorry, but Long Halloween and Man of Tomorrow haven't been on Max in a long time. They're they're not available on the streaming platforms. You can like rent it or something like on
No,
Amazon or something like that. But
I don't know why
so
these
if
people
anybody
don't just buy it.
you can do that. I
They
hope
should
you
have just
buy it.
bought it.
It's still
The
out there, it's
deluxe
still
edition
available.
digitally, like actually, I swear this month it was $4.99 on iTunes.
I have never
Like it
watched
was
it.
okay. Well,
I have
go
never
if you
watched the
ever
deluxe edition. I've only watched part one and part two. I've never seen them combined together into one experience. Is
do
that
you
weird?
know? Yeah. I mean, I don't to somebody who doesn't understand, like I'd think they would say yes, but for people, like if you contribute it to like if would you go and rewatch work? Like you put in a
Right.
shift at work, would you go back and rewatch it? It's like no, you did it, you're happy with it, you got the result, and then you're on moving on. I don't know that you'd revisit, so it makes sense. But
The
I was
only
just curious
reason to
if
revisit
you
it is for a commentary or something. We were somebody a college, a university here in town asked Jim Krieg and I to come out and do a screening of the movie and talk and do a Q&A, but it was supposed to happen in time for Halloween. I guess it's not happening because we haven't heard about it yet. But maybe we'll be doing things like that. I don't know.
that'd be awesome.
But that's going to be when I watch it like that, I guess. Something
So
like that.
you don't know. I thought somebody put the times together and the deluxe edition is longer than parts one and two together, not by much.
They
And
did
so,
they did there are some, I don't know if I think there are a few shots that are added, and I think there are
okay,
some of them are restored a little bit, like in terms of time.
okay,
Like there's some, I think there are some things that they that they cut down for the original release that for time, and then they kind of expanded them slightly. But I think they're all I think they're not huge, like in terms of they don't change the story at all. But how
I've
you
watched
experience it is
them.
different. You had to wait a
Yeah,
month when part one came out to see
it's a
part two.
terrible month, summer of 2021. It's a terrible month,
It was a
but
wild month.
but yeah, like in me and watching, I've yet to reach the point of watching separately and together so many times that I can distinguish a difference. I think it's still gonna be a while. Just rewatching it now, I watched the deluxe edition. Um,
Can't believe you
before I
came out.
always grab my actual discs and I watch part one and then I put in part two. Like, so
I
I
can't
don't
believe you
know,
came after me about Vernon, man. Like that's like,
you know,
come on. Like
respect for Vernon,
I had no
he's just trying
idea.
to
Like
make it in this town.
I know your love of this thing runs deep, but Vernon, I mean, all right,
You
I
you
guess.
answered the question with like, if no Vernon, would Harvey ever have become Two-Face? Well, everybody else said, I don't know, but then Tim Sheridan said, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
obviously.
Look, I will happily, that's a hill I'll die on. I can't, I can't lay that at Vernon's feet. Like I just can't.
Old Vernon.
That doesn't
Go,
work.
Vernon.
That doesn't work for me.
I could do it for you, but it's better to just come directly from you. Why don't you go ahead and plug away anything and everything before we scoot on out of here?
Yeah. So, first of all, Batman: The Long Halloween is available on uh, digital, Blu-ray, 4K, all of those things. You can get either part one, part two, separate, or you can get the deluxe edition that combines those together. So please, just in time for the holiday season here, check that out. Even though it's been 3 years, if you haven't seen it, for goodness sake, what are you doing listening to this
Yeah.
podcast?
Oh my goodness.
How are you? Everything's been spoiled for you. Uh, but I bet there are some people out there who maybe didn't do the deluxe edition and they only saw the separate parts. So, just a reminder that those are still out there. My trade paperback for my recent DC comic, Alan Scott, The Green
Yes.
Lantern, that just came out. So that's available now. It collects all 6 issues of the miniseries plus the 6-page prologue story that came out before the series started. So all that is available now at local comic shops or wherever you buy comic books or books for that matter.
Yeah.
We just finished another uh, tie-in series for Masters of the Universe for the show that I made with Kevin Smith for Netflix. We did a prequel comic book called Masters of the Universe Revolution. The trade paperback comes out in January if you weren't able to catch the single issues when they came out. So check that out. Otherwise, I'm working on some home renovations, which, I don't think that really interests anybody.
Let's see, best route to follow you to see when, you're up to things. Instagram?
Yeah, I never
Okay.
shut up about this stuff,
Oh,
but you can
okay.
catch me
Good.
I am no longer on X. I haven't been on since January 1st of this year. It was my New Year's resolution to leave what I
There
considered
you
to
go.
be the dumpster fire of the internet. And so I am available. You can catch me. You can follow me on Instagram. It's I love Tim Sheridan. I'm also on Threads under the same handle. I'm also on Blue Sky if anybody's using that. So check me out on there as well. But anytime anything's happening, any appearances, any places I'm going, like when I was in Cleveland and you didn't come,
I know.
Ryan.
Wow. And
Um,
I said I was a fan.
I'm always shouting about that stuff on there. The next thing I'm going to be at, though, is at the end of November, beginning of December. I'll be at Fan Expo San Francisco. If anybody wants to come out and nerd out some more about anything we've talked about today or other stuff. But actually, that's not the next thing. That's the next.
Okay.
That's right. The one before that is I'm going to be here in Los Angeles at a place called Revenge of, which is a comics and pinball. It's a comic book shop in the Eagle Rock area. And Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom work with
There
those
you go.
guys to put together a huge block party with like the biggest names, and for some reason also me in comics. Uh, and
Always the
so
modest
it's
one.
we did it last year for the first time, and it was an incredible event. If you are in or anywhere near the Los Angeles area, November 2nd from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Revenge of in Glassell Park or Eagle Rock area in Los Angeles. Come on out. I mean, you'll get to, I think Brian Michael Bendis is going to be there. Jeff Johns is going to be there. We're going to be signing books. We're going to be doing panels. There's all kinds of people. Patton obviously will be there.
Awesome.
Going to be a really great
Gosh,
event.
I
So
love Patton Oswalt.
and then at the end of the month, beginning of December, I'll be in San Francisco for Fan Expo.
You're busy, and that's going to wrap up 2024 for you.
Hopefully.
And I follow that with you can follow me, the Batman Book Club, on the Dumpster Fire, known as X, but also on Instagram, at the Batman BC for latest episode drops and upcoming episodes. Sadly, I will not have Patton Oswalt or Jeff Johns on those, but we'll maybe one of
Might.
these days.
You
One
might
of these
someday.
days, we'll
Yeah.
see. Of any comedian, like maybe Pat, like the wild shot in the dark would maybe Patton Oswalt because he's a geek like us.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, that is a total compliment, obviously. Anyways,
I would love to
let's
have
see.
him come on here and talk about his favorite Batman story. Like that would be so cool.
I would adore that. That's actually like that is the long like that would be the goal with stuff is like I mentioned earlier, like I had Sean Murphy on here earlier this year, and it wasn't like let's just talk about your books. It's like maybe you're tired of talking about your stuff. What's something that you as a fan like? Come on here and let's talk about that. Lieber Mayo, when he was on here, it wasn't to talk about his books. It was to talk about what he read as a fan, and which he talked about Arkham Asylum and how that influenced. I'm like, that stuff's really interesting. I'm like, hopefully that's an outlet that I can
I
really
think
reel
there's
in some
that's a
big
great
fish.
angle on this stuff. I think that people, I think that I know a lot of my colleagues and contemporaries, like they're looking for a place like that. They should be coming here and talking to you about that stuff.
You spread the good word, and
Mhm.
I'll slip you that money. Okay, that
Ooh,
Falcone
that
money.
sweet
I
podcast.
got, yeah, I got stacks. You can't see it. It's right over there. All three bills.
Got to be
But
better than comics. Got to be better than comics. Has to be.
I don't know. Maybe we'll talk as soon as we let up here. So, anyways, if you want to support the show, I already said at the top, patreon.com/BatmanBC. Go to tpublic.com, type in TBBC to buy one of those really sweet t-shirts that I know Tim has because he wore one before.
I know, I'm not-
But then if you want to support the show and you don't want to spend any money at all, it's 100% A-okay. Easiest, quickest, most impactful thing you can do is rate and review the show. So however you listen to it, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, wherever, go to the rate and review page, rate and review the show, because the more reviews the show gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, as Ra's al Ghul said in Batman Begins, that word is panic. So for writer extraordinaire Tim Sheridan, he wrote The Long Halloween Parts 1 and 2. I am Ryan Lauer. Until next time, read my Batman comics. Like
It's
The Long
Ray
Halloween.
Shulk. It's Ray Shulk.
It's Falcone.